I wanted to explore the idea of committed love.
Welcome to The Chat With Us, a The Last of Us after show powered by fandom. Coming up, we'll hear from showrunner Craig Mazin on the show's big departure from the game, how social media is reacting to the episode, Ellie's nightmare-inducing autopsy, and much more.
Welcome to The Chat With Us. It's The Last of Us after show brought to you by fandom. I'm Chris Hayner from GameSpot. I am the entertainment editor over there, joined as always by my faithful sidekick, or I'm the sidekick. One of us is a sidekick.
We don't we don't rank here.
Megan Vick, TV Guide senior editor, and this week we are joined, thankfully, by TV Guide writer Kat Moon. Kat, welcome to the party.
Hello, so happy to join the party.
We spent 90% of this episode with ancillary characters Bill and Frank. Bill played by Nick Offerman, who is a survivalist that when the apocalypse breaks out is hiding in a bunker and decides, like, I'm not gonna go join some military zone, I'm gonna stay here and create my own sort of utopia. And he does a very good job, but it's a very lonely existence until Frank shows up, played by the amazing Murray Bartlett, winds up in one of Bill's traps, has some dinner, is supposed to go on his way, and then the two embark on a romantic relationship that then they spend the next decade plus living out together in their own little, like, private utopia.
I love it.
Within this apocalypse, at some point they become friends with Joel and Tess. We find out that Frank and Bill are the ones using the radio system. That's how they've been, like, bartering and getting supplies. There is a very tense moment where raiders come and Bill has to defend the entire situation. But then they manage to survive that, and then we have this very bittersweet farewell to them that I know that we're going to dive into. Mostly it's very tragic, but overall, like, I feel like this is, if this episode of television does not win an Emmy, I feel like we should protest.
Yeah, I want to dig very, very. And then at the end of the episode, Ellie and Joel make their way to the place. They find out that Frank and Bill are gone. They get suited up and get a truck and get all the good stuff that Bill and Frank left behind.
Seatbelt.
So cool. I'm going to start with you first because Frank and Bill are what are their roles in the video game? Because from what I've heard, is that this is very expanded from their portrayal in the game.
Yes, this is very, very expanded because we never actually see Frank in the game. Frank is a character that is mentioned via a letter left by Bill, but, like, Frank and Bill's relationship, it's still very loving, but at a certain point they split because Bill is too stuck in his survival-y ways and Frank's not into it. And ultimately Frank kills himself.
Who the hell's Frank? He was my partner.
So the fact that, like, this is a full hour of television that is expanding on these characters. First of all, it's introducing Frank truly for the first time and expanding on these characters and the relationship in such a loving, beautiful way. Like, I love this. Of the episodes I have seen of The Last of Us, this is the one. This is the one that blows me away.
Yeah. Kat, what did you think?
I totally agree. And first of all, amazing casting with Murray Bartlett as Frank. You know, we saw him in The White Lotus as Armand, which I know so many people on our team absolutely loved. And in this role, he once again killed it. I just felt so many emotions watching all of the interactions, starting from, you know, I think we can talk about the very first day they meet, where at first Bill is very unsure about this guy who's entering, you know, his space that he's spent so much time, like, building up for so long. And then I thought the piano scene was done so beautifully when at first we see Frank just want to try it out and he plays some tunes and does not necessarily sound very great, but then Bill joins in and then he plays, and I really got goosebumps during that scene as he's playing the piano, singing.
There is no girl.
I will say for me, the most gutting scene for Frank and Bill for me was also on that first day, but a little bit later when it's a very intimate scene without being explicit, and I just think, like, they showcase how lonely Bill has been. Like, you get the sense, like, Bill built this life for himself. He was planning to spend the rest of his days alone amidst this.
I mean, he, like, we haven't gotten there yet, but, like, in a letter he leaves for Joel, he flat out says, I was glad when everyone died and I was alone, because he thought that's the way he wanted to go about his life, with nobody else around, until he met the right somebody else. And, like, even, like, I love how standoffish he was toward Frank in the beginning. and how like ultimately like Frank had to like teach him how to human.
Yeah.
You know, like which I found that wildly entertaining.
It's how we show love.
On a similar note, there's a scene later in which we see them have dinner with Joel and Tess. And it's because, like, Frank wanted a couple friend. Like, and there's this really magical moment where, like, Frank is like, come inside and see the house. I want you to see the house and all these things. And Bill's like, we don't let strangers in the house.
We do today.
And it's just so cute how excited Frank and Tess are to go see the house. And then you're left with these two survivor loner men.
Oh my gosh.
At the table trying to have this conversation, and it's like just the practicalities of that. And Joel does warn him, like, hey, raiders will come and you don't have enough, so like you do need us. It's a very practical conversation, but I thought like that dichotomy of Frank and Tess being like, yeah, we're gonna have wine and we're gonna go see the house while the men folk are out here chatting.
I love Frank just wants to have some semblance of what normal life is like
Yes.
to the point where like it leads to like painting things around town and like just making it not look like we live in an abandoned shanty town.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite scene, I think, from this episode was when they, Frank surprises Bill with a little visit to see the strawberries that he had planted, and that those were seeds from Tess. They taste the strawberries and then start laughing, and it's just such a beautiful moment, and I will never look at strawberries the same way after this episode.
That's fair. I mean, that's how I feel about mushrooms in this entire show, too.
Should we dive into sort of like the end of this episode in which you kind of get a dose of reality? We find out that Frank has some sort of terminal illness.
Yes.
And as he says, like, there wasn't a cure for this in the before times, let alone now. And they make the decision that if Frank decides that he doesn't want to live out his days just like in agony because there is no medication,
in
there's
agony,
no treatment,
in a wheelchair, like they live in a house with like, because I believe they had to essentially make a first floor bedroom because he couldn't do stairs anymore.
Right.
Like,
but he decides what is going to be his last day, and he makes Bill give him a wedding and all of these things, and then they have a very intense conversation at their final dinner.
I'm satisfied.
I have to ask, at what point did you know that Bill was also going to decide to kill himself that day?
I knew in the morning.
Like there's like, okay, well, so like, just to lay it out, essentially Frank asked Bill to like dose his wine with an overdose of his medication. And we learn that Bill has done the same to his wine. And like, I kind of had a feeling from the jump because like the way they built that relationship throughout this episode of TV, there was no going on. There was no post Frank life for Bill. He built what he thought was his perfect world and then realized that it's nothing without the person he loves. So what is he going to do now? Live out the rest of his lives in that imperfect world, as opposed to just dying with the man he loves. And you call it bittersweet at the beginning of this whole thing, and I kind of half agree. Like there was nothing like that's not bitter to me. Like they got to go out on their own terms together, peacefully. Like I kind of love that.
I think it is the sweetest possible ending they could have had in this world. Obviously, there's a utopia version where like we find a miraculous cure for whatever Frank has,
and then we live life out on an island
and they get to
somewhere.
die Notebook style, like in their 90s
in the rain. Just beautiful. I've never seen The Notebook.
Oh my gosh.
You're dumb.
That could be that.
That's the big takeaway from this is that I've never seen The Notebook. Come on, this is The Last of Us.
But so yes, they do decide. They both overdose on this wine and then go to bed together and curl up peacefully in their room. And then we come back to our main story by having Joel and Ellie show up at this house because after the disaster of the State House, Frank and Bill are their best chances of actually making it west. And then they find out that Frank and Bill are dead. But there's also a very special surprise / Easter egg when we get to the house. Chris, do you want to?
Honestly, it's just. If you love the games, and especially if I'm thinking of specifically the first game, there are very iconic costumes. I would even say Ellie more so than Joel, and she gets those clothes from Frank and Bill's house. It's the jacket with the red shirt. It's exactly the right look for that character. And obviously, she's gonna have more than one set of clothing for the rest of her life. So it's not like in the game where this is all she's gonna wear for the rest of the show. But like, it's such a nice nod, especially in an episode that expands so much on the world of the games, that they're able to still bring it back to this nice little nod to the people who love the game so much.
Hey! What'd I say to you when we walked down the steps? What'd I say?
I'm just fixing your stupid pile.
Don't touch.
Frank and Bill's storyline in the games wasn't a throwaway thing, but it was very much you said it perfectly, ancillary. Like, it wasn't main thrust of the story. They took what was just like this little piece of the story and like blew it up into this like grand love tale.
Yeah.
That like fits perfectly within the story they're trying to tell on the show, I think.
We also talked to executive producer Craig Mazin about why they expanded Bill and Frank's role for the show.
I wanted to explore the idea of committed love. Clearly, Frank's concept of what love is, which he articulates, is different than Bill's. And they kind of need each other. We can't have just one or just the other kind of love, but in some cases, it ends up being this beautiful thing where they do have a happy ending. And then in other cases, particularly with Joel and Ellie, their love for each other is so profound, it almost is dangerous. In the creation of this Bill and Frank story, I think we put all of the theme and motifs of the whole series. You're gonna see some of these dynamics playing out over and over, but to me, they all echo out of Bill and Frank.
Now it comes time for my favorite part of the week, but for this episode, it was a little difficult to choose my nightmare scene of the
Megan's
week.
nightmare scene of the week, lightning bolts.
I will say the scene that stuck with me the most after this episode was actually like the very last shot, which is we are in Frank and Bill's bedroom and we are just watching Ellie and Joel drive away in the truck afterwards. And so it's not even an actual scene in the show. I was terrified that they were going to pan over to their dead bodies.
Oh God.
I just sat and I was like, I should have had more faith in Craig and Neil that they would not, like that would have completely ruined
been really bad.
the episode for me. But like that ended up being I was like, oh God, if they show these dead bodies, or God forbid there's mushrooms on the bodies, I will just like lose.
Oh my God.
My own mind made it a nightmare scene. It's the open window. And you know that they're there, and you know that they're together, and you kind of get to leave it like that. But
it's also just kind of a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
It is. Before we get to Frank and Bill, Joel and Ellie are on their way to their house, and Ellie does a mini autopsy on liquor at the bottom of this convenience store.
It was not great. When I watched that, I was like, this has to be Megan's nightmare of the scene of the week. But
wow. Megan went with the sentimental pick.
I did.
Yes, I did have the same fear at the end, but I feel like actually you saying the Notebook ending is a great comparison, because our last memory of these two, lovers is them happily together and alive. So I'm glad that's where we left off.
Look at that.
I know. Guys, we're so mushy this week.
Not anymore. It's time for Ellie's Curse of the Week, baby. This isn't a big Ellie episode or a big Joel episode. They pop in at the end, and actually, the curse I picked out. Listen, they're not Ellie's words. She's definitely reading the note from Bill to Joel, and this quote, weirdly, yes, there's cursing in it, but it just so perfectly sums up Bill and Frank. And this is Ellie reading the letter. It says, I used to hate the world and I was happy when everyone died. But I was wrong because there was one person worth saving. So that's what I did. I saved him. Then I protected him. That's why men like you and me are here. We have a job to do.
And God help any mother who stand in our way.
I love that.
I think that's also it's great as it coming through Ellie as a vessel.
Yes, because that's who Joel is, and who he is going to have to be to keep Ellie safe.
Just hearing you read that made me feel very sad again.
It's a beautiful episode of television. It's honestly, after 2 episodes of pretty intense action, it's nice to get this just beautiful character story laid out and then have it propel us forward when Joel and Ellie get there and they are able to get the supplies they need, get a truck, they have a lot of guns, and they're ready to party. So next week's going to be weird. That pretty much wraps us up,
Well,
right?
that's what we think. I think we should also talk to our friends at GameSpot about what everybody at home thought. So we're going to throw it over to them, and we hope that you guys enjoyed this as much as we did.
What's up, everybody? Will and Tom here from GameSpot Social, talking to you about social reactions for episode 3 of The Last of Us. Starting off with The Last of Us wiki reactions. Tom, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so the first one is from a content moderator for The Last of Us wiki, Swedgen, and they say the first 2 eps showed that you can stick close to the game and make a great adaptation, and this one showed you can do something very different and still have a great adaptation. Yeah, this is by far, in this episode, the most we've ever deviated from the game, and it's amazing how it tells a story where this character, who in the game interacts with Joel and Ellie, and still has just as big an impact, if not more of an impact, on those characters and their story than he does in the game. It was remarkable.
Yeah, part of me is like, oh, those Bill interactions were fun, like when he grabs her and handcuffs her immediately, or showing off the traps, but you replace that with this like beautiful story that just like immerses you in what happened in that world, and I think that's something the game didn't pull off outside of the Outbreak prologue, and it's great to kind of get that reminder. Next up here from one of the admins of the wiki, Rhinosaurus Rex on Twitter, can't believe Ellie's walking past all of those lockers without checking them for ammo. Tom, you told me you had this exact same thought.
Yeah, it's something that I thought myself. She was trying to prove to Joel that the place hadn't been picked clean. She finds a sub-basement, and she finds a box of tampons, yay, but there's a ton of lockers there that in the game, like, I would be opening feverishly looking for duct tape, broken scissors to make a shank, and the fact that she didn't do that was a missed opportunity, I think.
Finally here from Sean's Slam Jam on Twitter, the Parks and Rec / Last of Us fans watching Nick Offerman go into a Home Depot. That whole scene where he takes off his mask and smiles and the music starts, oh, was so good.
Yeah, I thought that it was such a genius moment of, we never see how someone could potentially thrive in a world like this. And then, of course, the fact that Ron Swanson, Nick Offerman's character from Parks and Rec, would very much probably be like this in the world of The Last of Us was, I think, I'm sure they must have been aware when they were making this episode that people would make that connection.
Those are our social media reactions for episode 3. Thank you to the Last of Us wiki for submitting some awesome stuff, and also thank you to people on Twitter for giving us some great content to go over. Back to you guys in the studio.
Let's pretend that it's September, and you have to give the guest performance Emmy to Murray Bartlett or Nick Offerman. Which one do you give it to?
Oh, God. I think the reason I want to say Nick Offerman is because we're introduced to him as that solo, curmudgeonly, I hate the world person. And we get to see him change into this man in love who builds this, essentially what is their perfect life together. And like, so it's, and then ultimately deciding like, I don't want to be without this person, so it's time for me to go as well. Like, you get such a full-fledged story for Nick Offerman's character that like, I really love it. But like Murray Bartlett they're both so good. Can we tie? Do the Emmys tie?
It has happened before, yes.
Okay, so it's going to be a tie.
Wow, I mean, I have to agree. I think as much as I love Murray and want good things for him, I think just seeing Nick Offerman's character from the start, and you know, he doesn't only open his heart to Frank, but seeing him write the letter to Joel and put the trust in Joel. I think when he was shot and we all thought he was going to die, he was like, oh, you know, Joel will take care of you, and just seeing the evolution of his character in this 1 hour episode, I feel like seeing him soften up, that was so impressive to do. So I think, yes, Nick Offerman.
You know what, guys? I was gonna say Murray Bartlett just because I was gonna say it because I just feel like when they introduced Bill's character and I saw it was Nick Offerman, I was like, that is the man you cast for this role.
Yeah. Yeah. The entire idea of Bill is just like, if you look up Bill in the dictionary, it's just a picture of Ron Swanson.
I'm not interested in caring about people.
It has once again been a pleasure to sit and talk about the show with you. Thank you, Kat, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously, our big RIP this week is Frank and Bill. Shout out to them. Pour one out for them. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe. We are going to be back next week, and we hope that you're continuing on this journey with us. Awesome. Thanks for coming.